so excited to like finally meet you, and I'm looking forward to learning a little bit more about you, your team, your company, for you to provide us with your expertise to educate our couples.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. This is exciting for me because I don't really do a lot of podcasts or like interviews like this before, but it's something that we want to get, more into. So this is definitely exciting for me.
Before we get started with why we're doing this video, tell me a
Yeah.
little bit about you, your team, your story, and what you do.
So Hope Weddings is basically a creative team, right? It's myself and my brother, and we also, include some of our friends and people that we know in our network. But really, what it was is just an amalgamation of like the last couple years, just freelancing, and we wanted to rebrand it and come up with a name that was sort of fitting and a brand that was sort of fitting for the work that we do. So that's kind of where I got started. That's what we've been working on for like the past, it feels like forever, but it's only really been like 5 6 months now.
Wow.
That's kind of in a nutshell what we do. We do wedding photography and wedding films, and we're based in the Bay Area.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. I honestly, we connected a little while ago, and I've watched you guys blossom on social media, and I'm really excited to get to work with you guys because, for one, we're Latinos, we're minority owned businesses, and I can see the passion you guys have in what you're doing. So definitely keep it up, keep going, and I know you guys will get far.
Yeah. Thank you. No, I appreciate it. We love what we do. We want to, keep growing the business and keep doing good work for the people that trust us ultimately, right? Like they trust us with a really important day of their lives that, you can't really redo ever. Yeah, well, I mean, I guess you could do like vow renewals and stuff, but it's really not, not the same thing as like your wedding day, right? So
Right.
we take it seriously, but we also love what we do. And in the end, it's just, we find it really fun. It doesn't feel like work.
Well, let's go ahead and get started. So, my goal for this particular video is for you to provide us with a list of 10 questions that our clients should be asking a photographer, videographer when they're looking to hiring them. Because I get that a lot. Like a lot of our couples have never planned a wedding before and they don't know what to ask. And so, if you could provide us with 10 questions based on your experience and expertise, that would be super helpful.
Cool. Okay, perfect. So I kind of broke up the questions that people should be asking their photographer up in 4 different buckets. That's just kind of how my mind works. I kind of just compartmentalize things like that. So the first bucket, I kind of called it in my notes, like the background check, right? Like nowadays with Instagram and social media, it's really easy for, anyone to write whatever they want or pass on, different images as I won't get into like horror stories that I've heard, but basically you just verify and make sure that your photographer has the expertise that they say that they do on their website. So like some questions that I recommend people ask before they pay any sort of investment or deposit is if you can see a full wedding gallery from the photographer from beginning to end, right? Because sometimes, us as photographers will just put, the best images or images from just the couple, but you want to make sure that the quality is consistent from beginning to end. So that's something that I recommend. That would be number one. Number two is, have you ever shot at the venue that I'm planning on having my celebration at? This is not a must have, I think, in my opinion, but for some people it might be. So just if the photographer has that expertise or has that experience of being at the venue and kind of knowing the best spots for lighting or spots
Mhm.
for different shots. So I think that's also an important question to ask. And then
I
the third one is, what is your approach to shooting a wedding? I think that experienced photographers kind of have just this rhythm or this sort of system that they use to shoot a wedding and make sure that they get all the shots that they need to get and sufficient shots and quality shots for for their clients. So I think that any experienced photographer will have sort of an approach that they rely on when they're shooting a wedding, right? So those are the top three that I call like the background check for your photographer.
I love it. And that's super important because I know nowadays, there's a lot of like cardstock photos that people can simply download from Canva and post as their work. So that's
Yeah.
really important.
Potential client isn't going to look and make sure or read the caption or look at the
Mhm.
tag. So they're just going to assume that everything on your feed is yours, right? So that's something that in this day and age, it's fair to be pretty skeptical. So and I recommend like everyone who inquires with us, like shop around and make sure that you have found the right photographer for you, right? It doesn't necessarily always mean the budget, like finding the right photographer might, be right in your budget or might be a little bit more, but, just making sure that you're going to get quality at the end of it is really important.
Absolutely agree.
Cool. The second round of questions under bucket two has to do with logistics and agreements, right? You've got to plan for the worst, but shoot for the best every single time. So, number one question that couples should be asking their photographers is, what is your refund or cancellation policy? Right now, with COVID and with regulations changing, it feels like every single day. It's important to kind of have that in place and kind of have something already there in the contract or already there agreed upon with the photographer. So the second question under this bucket, like I would say, is what is the backup plan if you, meaning the photographer, is unable to shoot the wedding for an unexpected reason, right? There should be something in the agreement or in the contract. I know that we put something in there for us, but every business is different, right? And so
Right.
I don't want to speak to all of the photographers in the area or all the photographers in California, but there's got to be a backup plan in case something happens, right? And then the third one is, will you be submitting our photos to magazines or blogs? Or a similar question is, are you going to be posting our wedding photos on your website or social media or using it for marketing? We have found that there are a lot of clients who like to keep, their images, to themselves in private and don't want their images or their faces out there. So making sure that, that's clear from the get-go that
Yeah.
if they're going to be used for marketing purposes or used on the website or used for other people to see in general.
Yeah. That's a really important one.
Then the third bucket is, I called it like the pricing and the packages questions, right? So one thing that we've seen come up is a question, what is the charge for overtime? Do you see a lot of weddings go overtime in the weddings that you plan?
You know what? I don't we don't go over time because obviously I'm there to guide them through the timeline and that's something that I focus on. But what I do see is specifically this. Let's say they're hiring me for month of coordination.
Mhm.
They did all the booking of the vendors and they'll book a photographer for 6 hours, but realistically we need the photographer for 8 hours. So that's something I will catch within that month and then we'll right away change or
Mhm.
add that extra hour or
Mhm.
two.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. Perfect. So the next question under that was, does the package I'm interested in, the wedding photography or film package, does that include an assistant? We personally, we don't feel like an assistant is always needed, right? Depending on how big the wedding is or how many people are attending.
Right.
Nowadays, with all the regulations, weddings are pretty small, so we usually don't feel like there's a need for an assistant, right?
Mhm.
Usually like one photographer and one videographer will suffice. If they've been to enough weddings and shot enough weddings before, they know how to sort of capture the whole story and the whole day. So that's a question that we see come up. And it is an important question to ask, right? Because if that is really like a deal breaker for the couple, then I mean, then by all means they should have an assistant there, right? But that's it's always best to be clear about that, and that's a question we get pretty often.
I think that's a great question too. Yeah.
Perfect, perfect. Okay. The last group of questions was around delivery, right? So the delivery of the images and the delivery of the video, and in some cases, the delivery of the print, right? So always an important thing to know right off the bat is how long will it take for us to receive a gallery? But a question that goes along well with that is how long after the wedding can we see a preview of the images, right? We always we know that couples are anxious to see their wedding photos and they want to relive the day, and so I don't think it's ever like too soon to send them previews, but it should always kind of be clear before you sort of sign a contract or pay any deposit, like when are you going to get your photos. You don't want to be waiting like a whole like half a year or a whole year. And
Yeah.
I've heard stories like that where,
Me too.
yeah, it's pretty amazing. I can't believe it, but I know it happened.
What do you think is considered like an average turnaround time?
For us, I'll speak to us. We usually take around 3 to 4 weeks
Mhm.
to deliver the photos or to deliver a gallery, which we include photo and video. So it really depends on the business, but for
Yeah.
us, it takes like 3 to 4 weeks. And then the last one, we get this question a lot. We actually get a lot of couples who come back after like a year or 2 or 3, and they're like, "Oh, well, we can't see our wedding gallery online." And like because we're trying to save space and save space and save save costs, so we take down the galleries after a year or a year and a half, right? So a question that couples should be asking is how long will the images or my gallery be accessible online?
Super educational and informative.
Yeah.
Where can couples find you?
Yes, couples can find us at Haute Weddings, HAUT Weddings, on Instagram. That's where we are kind of just hosting the majority of our community, both clients that have worked with us and vendors and people that we're connecting to on Instagram. I feel
Mhm.
like that's where most people can find us and easily
Yeah.
access. Going on our website, which is there in our bio, is always the best way to reach out to us.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. And Aaron, before we go, is there any advice you want to give in regards to anything in general?
I would say just to not be afraid to ask as many questions as you'd like. Personally, I love it when people ask me questions because it makes me rethink about or just think about things that I haven't thought about in my business before, right? So the other day we had somebody who inquired with us and just asked us a ton of questions about our business that I hadn't really thought about, and I thought it was great. So
Yeah.
I would say if you are looking for any vendor, feel free to ask some questions, and usually that'll help you find the right fit for the type of celebration that you're
Yeah.
having. So that's my advice.